It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and I am super pleased to note that today's show is brought to you by AgSmart Expo. It's happening August 1st and 2nd. That's right, next week at Olds College. Check out agsmartolds.ca for the full lineup and to get your tickets. Now, if you're like me, you're probably somewhat shocked to think about the fact that, next week is August. I don't know where July went, but it has vaporized. But I took inspiration from the sponsorship and the upcoming AgSmart Expo, which I have never been to, and I certainly plan to go to because it sounds super cool. But one of the things, and you'll hear about this later in the show, so Dr. Joy Agnew is going to join me to talk about the Expo, what it's all about, and why it's so important. But one of the main reasons this event even exists is really not just to showcase, let's say, research or technology, but to really put it together with how can we use this? What should the industry be adopting, perhaps leaving behind, or maybe what needs tweaked, or how do we bring something that has shown potential into the field or on a widespread basis? And I would say until we had something like the smart farms that are, at Olds, or something like AgSmart, I would say industry has led on a lot of this, but also it's been a lot of farmers and a lot of agronomists trying to figure out how to use some technology, whether it's robots or drones or mapping, trying to use it all and trying to figure out the ROI, trying to figure out the best use of it, and even just the actual, making it all talk to each other is also a challenge. So I've taken inspiration from that, and on today's show, you're going to hear a few different pieces of this, but most specifically, I've snagged some audio from The Sharp Edge, and if you head on over to RealAgriculture.com, you can see the entire series of The Sharp Edge, so it's a video series. You can also find it on YouTube. This episode happens to talk exactly that, about robotics on farm, having autonomous vehicles doing things like planting or putting down fertilizer, and really making those hard decisions of, is this paying for itself? What other benefits might it offer? And, is it really worth it? Is the trade-off worth it? And that was actually part of our Saturday email. So on Saturday, we send out an insights kind of issues-based email to all of our subscribers. And we talk about, how do you add up, or do you add up the return on investment on technology? And it's not as easy as, just dollars and cents, because sometimes technology saves you time. And let's face it, as farmers, we're perhaps not the best at monetizing our time. And so sometimes we can take for granted just how much piece of technology or a piece of equipment has actually saved us. So we also have a poll, and I would love to hear your thoughts on what piece of technology. And when I say technology, I don't just mean equipment. I want to make that very clear. So technology can be things like a herbicide tolerance trait or genomics in cattle. We have to think about technology not as hardware and software, but as really a solution to what you do. So we've put together a poll. We'd love to know your thoughts. What technology on the farm has really had the best ROI on your farm? And sneak peek right now, sectional control seems to be the winner. So we've got a couple options on there. If what you think has had the best ROI is not on that list, would love to hear from you. So you can, of course, reach out. My email is lsmith@realagriculture.com, or you can head on over across social media. We are at RealAgriculture. You can find us there and let us know your thoughts, or call that RealAg feedback line, 1-855-776-6147. All right, let's get to the show. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with the rest of the show, brought to you by AgSmart Expo, happening next week, August 1st and 2nd. We'll be back right after this.
Introducing the Arion 600 Series tractor by Claas, where versatility meets productivity head on, because you've got jobs to do. Mowing, tedding, raking, baling, loading, filling, tilling, cleaning, spreading, hauling, feeding. This is multi-purpose reimagined to do the work for you. It's more than just power. The Arion 600 tractor gets it done.
The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to get your crop off to a great start and a strong finish. Whether you're growing chickpeas, faba beans, lentils, or peas, you'll get all the latest and best agronomic information at PulseSchool.com. A library of top-notch agronomy videos from industry experts available on demand at your fingertips. Visit the Pulse School, brought to you by BASF on RealAgriculture.com.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Sean Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today. Welcome back to RealAg Radio on this July 25th. Yes, it is a Tuesday. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. And today's show is brought to you by the AgSmart Expo, happening August 1st and 2nd at the Olds College. Check out agsmartolds.ca for more information and to get your tickets. All right, for this segment, we really are in line with exactly the kinds of things that are going to be talked about at that AgSmart event. This is a clip from the latest episode of The Sharp Edge, and it features Mark Richards. He's a farmer here out of Ontario who is using the Roboti system and he's evaluating what the fit might be for this system. What can it save on the farm? And I really like this talk, and you'll hear Bern Tobin's voice as well. I really like this discussion on evaluating the technology, and also he almost takes a bit of what has happened in the dairy industry where the robot does the milking. So in this case, the robot is doing the planting, maybe some other things. And so what does that free you up to do? So it's a really great discussion on evaluating technology, what this exact technology can do or might do in the future, and how you balance that with what you need to get done on the farm.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin. Welcome to the Sharp Edge. Today I am down in Dresden, Ontario, catching up with Henry Prinzen, Mazick's agronomist. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Bern, yourself?
I'm doing well. We are at the farm today of Mark Richards, and Mark has got a pretty diverse operation here, but I have a question for you. Why is Mark Richards on the Sharp Edge?
So Mark's on the Sharp Edge because he's kind of leading the cutting edge of robotics and autonomous agriculture, and we really wanted to catch up with him and see, hey, what are some of the systems approaches with these robots, and what does the future look like, and maybe how's it fit into your operation, and can it make you a better agronomist? Can it make you a better farmer with robots? I don't know. It's just a really interesting thought process and seeing where it's going to go in the next few years.
Here's Mark Richards.
Hey Mark, we're out in your field, so can you give us a bit of a rundown on your operation and your rotation and what you're doing out here?
So we farm some acres around and near Dresden, Ontario. Our typical rotation in a field like this is 1 year of wheat, followed by your sugar beets, then corn, and then soybeans, and then back to wheat. We're 100% strip till and no-till where we can be, and we're looking at a system where we're not working any more ground than we have to.
We've seen the robot. Tell us a little bit about the robot and what it's doing for you and where you've come with the robot.
So this is the second year we've tried an autonomous vehicle to use it to plant sugar beets, and this year we planted some corn with it. Last year we used a product called a Farm Droid. There was issues with it related to my system with strip till, which is why we went to this year. We have an Agro Intelli Roboti. It's a 70 horsepower Kubota diesel motor that drives it. The one before was 100% solar powered, which was kind of cool. The Roboti is a small, light unit. It's capable of doing a 10-foot planter pass. Right now, we're set up for 10-foot spraying pass. It works about 3 miles an hour when it's in autonomous mode, and we wanted to make sure that it could follow the strips that we'd made with our strip tiller and plant on the strips and see if it'll work into the system.
So what are we hoping to learn with this robot? Like, what are some of your goals with the robots going forward?
Well, the goal of the robot is to determine whether it is actually more efficient to use autonomous vehicles in agriculture in southwestern Ontario. One of the biggest things is to have the scalability of the product to be able to actually cover some ground. So if you compare a 4-row planter at 3 miles an hour to somebody planting with a 24-row planter at 7 miles an hour, obviously I'm going to fall behind. But what are the advantages to having that smaller implement in the field? Can I get in there a couple days earlier because it's lighter and it's going to be driving on my non-work ground, and will it let me get ideal planting conditions and catch the moisture before it leaves? Will allow me to take a closer look at how things are working in the field, whereas, everybody gets in the habit when you're sitting in the tractor seat and all your monitors say everything's good. Why do I need to get out and check? It's a nice air-conditioned or heated cab, depending on the year. I can sit there and read my Twitter friends. I can sit there and answer emails. I can do other farm management stuff, but maybe this has more focus of what agronomically are we doing right and wrong on the planter. It frees you up to do better management that way, but it is, as you think about the whole system, it's changing what you actually do every day.
So, Mark, what do you think some of the pros or cons, like maintenance, cost-wise, with the Roboti are?
Still, I won't say struggling, but I'm still running over in my head whether this is the way we need to go, or whether large-scale implements with better boots on the ground is where I see it a fit. Is for a guy in that 500-700 acre range. You can plant 50 acres a day with this, so you got 10 to 12 days of planting window almost every year between the 1st of April and the end of May. Some years you got more, some years you got less, but again, you have the advantages of a light machine. Is it better for the soil health because you're not doing the compaction? Is it better because you can be there on time, ahead of time, or you can get in there earlier for post-planting or post-emergence spraying or side dressing or fertilizer applications? What kind of equipment do you need to build to fit? The robot has a Category 2 3-point hitch on it. It's capable of living 1.7 metric tons. So that's your design limit on what you're going to put on it. What all can you do with it? How many things can you do in one pass to make that 4-row implement actually be the same efficiencies as doing an 8-row system where you're making multiple passes to accomplish the same goals? So looking at fertilizing, planting, and some pesticide application in one pass, that takes 3 passes away from going through the field 3 times. You're only going through once with this nice light thing. And yes, I'm going to have somebody managing and nursing the robot, but you still need somebody to nurse a regular planter, a regular fertilizer spreader, and a regular sprayer. So still working it out. And so moving forward, we want to look at what can we build for it. We're looking at a better planter unit. This year we used a John Deere Flexi Planter unit, which is very old technology but does work, especially at lower speeds. There were some challenges with that. This year was not a good year as we ran out of moisture due to the dry conditions of spring. Things are looking pretty good now, and things are going to catch up. And in the future, how many of these would you have to do the 500 to 700 acres? And somebody's got to do the research and the real in the field trials with it, or else we're not going to have answers. And maybe it doesn't fit North American agriculture, but maybe it does.
So, Mark, what's kind of the timeline, or what are some of your ideas in the immediate future with the robot?
So in the immediate future, we're going to take, I'll call them baby steps, but we have designed and we're in the process of building a 2-row strip till machine, because we have done some experiments with the tractors and we are pretty sure that it'll be capable of pulling strips at 3 miles an hour on 2 rows. We have to talk to Agro and Telly to make sure we can get it set to do a 5-foot thing, and we'll make more tramping or more wheel tracks, but we don't think that's a problem in the summer. We're looking at doing it after wheat. For next year, we are going to get a tricked out 4-row planter built to go on the back of it. We're going to combine those operations I talked about. We're going to put dry fertilizer application on the robot as well as the planting, and if we can, we'll incorporate that first pass of spraying behind it. So the short-term plans, we're looking at investing in those implements, and potentially in a couple of weeks we should have a 10-foot sprayer that we can put in part of one of the sugar beet fields for fungicide application. The advantage there is we're hoping to be able to band spray until the beets are a pretty good size and save on chemical costs, and we'll see what that would have a positive environmental benefit. So that's the immediate plans.
So, looking forward down the road, 5 years from now, what does this autonomous farming look like for you, Mark?
So to put the whole autonomous, and if everything works the way we want it to, in 5 years, you would have more than one of the robots. So picture having 3 robots working, and they can all work, and one person can keeping up, checking behind them, making sure they're doing, and probably keeping the product in them for the nursing them. But you would be able to come into this 150-acre field we're standing in right now, which has got some sugar beets and some corn in it, and spend a day here with those 3 machines and be done here and move on to another set of fields if you had them close together. Or you could split them up and run. The idea is to make sure this technology is scalable so it's actually relevant in North America's agricultural production system. And we have plans, and we're looking at funding opportunities to try and do this where we're not taking 100% of the risk, where we're kind of sharing it. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around, is this worth it? But we will see.
So there you have it. Henry, a great conversation with Mark. One thing I learned is, hey, robots aren't necessarily going to replace people.
No, I think what we have to learn or think about with robots is that we might have to do some more management. We're not riding in the tractor anymore, but we're following along behind the robot. We're checking the field. Maybe we can be a little more boots on the ground, a little more active in the field, finesse that crop and put it into the perfect conditions.
Yeah, and Mark's talking about, multiple robots. He's not going to have that big horsepower, but he's probably going to be able to do a lot.
Yeah, so we got to look at some of the potential benefits of scaling back as maybe we have less compaction. Maybe 2 robots allows us to do different fields at a different time. Or in some cases, these robots are going to be doing 2 jobs at once so that we can scale back size. But if we get 2 jobs done instead of 1, we're catching up.
Great interview, Henry. Great to have Mark Richards on the show today. We'll see you later in the summer, and we'll see you next time on The Sharp Edge.
All right, and with that, we will head to a quick break, and then I'm going to be back with Dr. Joy Agnew with Olds College, and she's going to let us know everything to expect from the AgSmart event next week.
Does your N stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
As you head out into the field this season, the Corn School's got you covered. Everything from tillage discussions, weed control info, field trial results, yield strategies, and more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Pride Seeds, BASF, and Syngenta Canada.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on this Tuesday. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and joining me now for today's Product Spotlight is our show sponsor, with our show sponsor, I should say, Joy Agnew. She's the Vice President of Research for the Olds College of Agriculture and Technology. Welcome here, Joy.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's talk about AgSmart. So why AgSmart? What is this event? Why are we hosting this event?
So AgSmart is basically the critical piece or critical platform of Olds College's knowledge mobilization or knowledge transfer platform to get information out about ag and ag technologies and ag practices to industry. So it's our anchor event. It's a 2-day outdoor expo where farmers and all industry representatives have an opportunity to really interact with some cutting-edge, high-tech ag players and hands-on demonstrations and interactive exhibits to really experience the latest in ag innovations. The really critical or the cool piece of this particular expo is the combination of educational sessions as well as the exhibits and in-field demonstrations, because it's a really great way to share all of the information right from the specific sensors to what we're learning from those sensors as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. So why is an expo, as you mentioned, 2 days outdoors, why is an expo like AgSmart so important to the industry as a whole?
Because ag and technology and data and utilization is exploding, and there's so much information and options out there, and industry really needs a place to go to kind of distill it all together, see how it's working at a working farm like the Olds College Smart Farm, as well as with other potential early adopters or users out there. So it's really a critical place to go and get access to independent, unbiased, not sales pitch information about the technologies and options that are either currently available or about to be available, so that farmers and other industry stakeholders can make really sound decisions about them.
And, of course, every year when you're hosting an event, there's always something new, exciting, different. What is new or changed for this year's event?
Well, we're seeing the event grow, obviously. So the first AgSmart event was held in 2019, and this is, I believe, our 4th show. We did have to cancel in 2020. So we're constantly seeing growth. And this year, we're really excited to see growth in both exhibitors as well as participants outside of Alberta and even outside of Canada. So some really great international presence is expected for this year's show. And then the second new piece for this show is the fact that we are integrating the Field Crop Development Center Field Day within AgSmart for the very first time. So with Field Crop Development Center operating under the Olds College umbrella, it really makes sense to showcase their 50 years of variety development and innovation as part of this massive AgSmart event. So the FCDC Field Day will take part on the second day of AgSmart this year on August 2nd.
Oh my goodness, technology, plants, something for everyone. There you go. All right, now when, of course, does AgSmart happen, and where can people go for more information?
So AgSmart will be held August 1st and 2nd, Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, right on Olds College campus at the south end. And all of the details related to schedule and exhibitors and all the presentations and demos, as well as to get tickets, can be found on agsmartolds.ca.
AgSmart, and that's agsmartolds.ca. Head on over there. Right, Joy?
That's right.
Plan ahead. Don't miss out. All right. Joy Agnew, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. That is, of course, the AgSmart event happening August 1st and 2nd at Olds College. That's next week. So thank you joining me on the show today, Joy.
Thank you, Lyndsey.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this July 25th. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and it is Tuesdays with Lyndsey, so thanks for joining me here. Today's show is brought to you by the AgSmart Expo. That's happening August 1st and 2nd. Yes, that's next week, so get it on the calendar. That is happening at Olds College. Go to agsmartolds.ca to check out the full agenda of what's happening and to get your tickets. All right, going now to a conversation I had with Dr. Reynold Bergen. He's the science director with BCRC, and I wanted an update on where we're at with antimicrobial resistance in the livestock sector. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Reynold Bergen. He's the science director with the Beef Cattle Research Council. Welcome here, Reynold.
Well, thanks, Lyndsey. I feel that expectations have already been raised beyond where they should be.
So I should let everyone know that, Reynold, you have been part of the Real Agriculture framework since the very beginning, is why I say this, in that I think every time I have a question about cattle health or antimicrobial resistance, even the fact that I call it antimicrobial resistance and not antibiotic resistance, is all because of you. So this is a long-standing, yeah, there you go. It's a long-standing discussion we have about these things. All right. But that is what we're talking about today. So I want to have this conversation because I think it's one that was very important and got a lot of sort of media attention, ag media attention. It's still just as important, but maybe some other things sort of overshadowed it for a while. So I wanted to bring it back to a healthy discussion on where are we at? Because we have had some legislative changes, and I want to ask about that patient-client veterinary, what are they called? The relationships,
veterinary client-patient relationship.
There you go.
VCPR.
There you go. I couldn't think of the acronym. So I want to talk about sort of what the impact of that has been. But let's start with sort of where we are at with antimicrobial resistance. Is it still a major concern? Is it getting worse?
It's still a major concern. And the reason it's a major concern isn't because the house is on fire. It's a major concern because we want to make sure the house doesn't catch fire. Right? Antibiotics or antimicrobials are really, really important for keeping animals healthy and humans healthy. And so making sure that we can keep antimicrobial resistance at a minimum, make sure that those is the way that we make sure those drugs continue to be effective when people or animals get sick.
Now, we did have, as we mentioned, the change where, and I'm a livestock producer. This change for us was seamless. We already had a relationship with a veterinarian. We already did sort of annual meetings with our vet and are pretty lucky to have really great vets close by. But of course, within the livestock world, not everyone necessarily had that or has that. And now to access antibiotics and antimicrobials, you do have to be working with a veterinarian. You have to have a relationship with a veterinarian. How has that gone as far as moving the needle on education and judicious use of these drugs?
Well, it's kind of a two-part answer because I work in the beef industry, and the beef industry has two main sectors. There's the cow-calf or ranch sector, and then, of course, the backgrounding and feeding sector. And I would say that there was virtually no impact on the feeding or backgrounding sector because those people worked with veterinarians on a regular basis, mostly with consulting veterinarians, and so that relationship was already in place. They were already getting their pharmaceuticals from the vet or through a vet-patient relationship anyhow, so there was no big change there. The big change was on the cow-calf side because a lot of cow-calf producers relied on the farm store, right? The UFA or PV Mart or whatever farm store to go buy some of their antibiotics, the older ones, tetracyclines, all the way to Mycotil, you could buy over the counter. And what happened was in 2018, there were some rule changes within the federal government that made that illegal. So at that point, the only way you could get antibiotics to treat your livestock was through a veterinarian, and not just any veterinarian, but one with whom you had a veterinary client-patient relationship, which meant that they understood you, they understood your operation, the way you managed, what kind of health issues you ordinarily would have. So that was a big change for people who weren't ordinarily seeing their vet. It meant that, well, at least once a year they had to have a conversation with their vet. And I think for the most part, that's proved to be quite positive, right? Because having a professional involved in your herd health program is nothing but upside. We did there was concerns that with that regulatory change, that there may be changes in animal health outcomes, or that people might not just be treating their animals, or on the other hand, maybe antimicrobial use and would improve, or antimicrobial stewardship would improve, and antimicrobial resistance would go down. And so we've done a couple of projects on that, looking at it in eastern and western Canada, and so far we've seen virtually no difference, which isn't actually that much of a surprise when you think about it, because although we know that virtually every rancher uses antibiotics, hardly any cattle get them, because very few get sick. And so yeah, in practice, it's made no real appreciable differences on farm. The big difference is that we can point to that from a consumer confidence perspective, that there is very clear veterinary oversight on the antimicrobial use side.
And I think personally, and as you said, for many of us, it didn't change anything really, except, I'll be honest, not having the feed store or whatever carry some basic products was an adjustment. Because it does mean I have to drive an extra 25 minutes one way to go and pick things up. Prices, I would say, probably did go up a little, but with inflation, who knows now? What's the real point of all that? So, I mean, definitely a difference, but nothing that wasn't insurmountable. And certainly from my perspective anyway, the reasoning for it makes a lot of sense, in that veterinarians are the medical professionals for our livestock, and having them on your farm or having a relationship with them only benefits your farm if you're working with a vet to work through some of the prevention of this and then treatment. Because that's, I think, one of the big things that we get from our vet, and I'm sure is the same for many. And as you mentioned, in the feedlot sector, they're working with consulting vets. Like, prevention is still the focus, right, of proper nutrition, of a good vaccine strategy, and it's preventing sickness, not just treating it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we kind of in the science world, you hear a lot of excitement about antibiotic alternatives, and what gets overlooked a lot of times is that the best alternative to antibiotics is having cattle not get sick in the first place, right? So it's prevention, and it's those basic things. It's nutrition. And not just of the calf that's most likely to get respiratory disease. It's also the mother of that calf, right? Making sure that her nutrition is good when she's pregnant, so that she's giving birth to a healthy calf, and making sure that her nutrition is good when she's pregnant so that she can produce colostrum, and making sure that her nutrition is good when she's pregnant so that she can produce milk when that calf is born, and give it a good start in life. That's a big part of it, because vaccines are really useful. They're really useful to prevent disease, but they're way more effective when the calf has the ability to mount a good immune response, and that's what the nutrition helps give it. A lot more emphasis on just kind of doing the right things, about being careful when you're buying replacement stock, right? I mean, a year like this, when it's as dry as it is, there are cattle going to town. A lot of people are selling, some people are buying, and buying anonymous animals with no kind of herd health history. Sometimes that bargain ends up being really expensive if you introduce a whole new disease to the place. And so yeah, prevention through biosecurity nutritional practices, vaccination practices, all those things are I would say more important now than they ever have been.
Mm-hmm. Now, what more could we be doing, though, specifically on the antimicrobial resistance front? Because, I mean, yes, it's important to talk about biosecurity and overall herd health and working with your nutritionist. What else could we be doing to prevent or delay antimicrobial resistance?
Well, I think one of the key things is to use your network, and the most important person in your network when it comes to animal health is your veterinarian. They understand you, they understand your operation, they understand your animals, they understand your history. And working with your veterinarian, they can go a long way to developing a preventive herd health program that's not just about vaccinations, but that'll be part of it. It'll be about your nutrition, your grazing management, and all the rest of it.
Do we need more producer education on appropriate use of antimicrobials, or does that not get the uptake we wish it would?
So in terms of encouraging the adoption of practices on farm that'll reduce the need for antibiotics, Beef Cattle Research Council, who I work for, we've been getting quite active in recent years on the extension side. We don't have boots on the ground extension, but what we have done is developed a pretty good website at beefresearch.ca. And our intent there was to turn research results into useful things for producers. And so we've got a lot of information in there about kind of the thought process to go through when you're trying to improve herd health, and a bunch of tools to help assess either on your own or with your veterinarian or other consultants about what sort of management practices make economic sense for your information. I think, and it's tough, right? Because there's like 60,000 beef operations across the country, and they're not all at the same level of adoption. So, there's some people that don't have anything to learn from us because they're pretty plugged in with their veterinarian and with the industry already. But there's so many producers who learn best from other producers. Other producers setting the example, doing the right things and saying the right things and kind of walking the walk and pointing out, okay, here's why it's important that we do these things as an industry.
Mm-hmm. But also I wanted to mention that you're being very modest on the impact of the extension that Beef Research, I think it's .ca, right? beefresearch.ca.
Yeah.
It's great. Like, there's a lot of stuff on there. And your comms team has been doing a fantastic job sharing it on social and making it accessible to as many people as possible. Because I think sometimes we forget as an industry that there are also, even if you've grown up on a farm, you might not understand why, let's say, your parents did a certain thing or why you had a certain protocol. And there's always a first time for everything. So, from everything from how to tube a calf to why you have vaccines, a vaccine schedule that you do, or the one I found really interesting was, breeding your heifers first. Why would you do that? And the explanation that a heifer after her first calf can take longer to come into heat again. I had no idea. I was today years old, basically, when I found these things out. But I do. I think the point about not, needing extension is a really good one. Right? Because how do we as an industry share the knowledge that we have and the research that your organization has accumulated? How do we best share it? So I guess, have you had a lot of feedback from that site helping to actually move the bar when it comes to producer education?
BCRC, through our website, which is beefresearch.ca, and all the social media and all the rest of it that's tied to it, do put a lot of effort into getting these tools that producers have paid for, getting that stuff out into the hands of producers themselves. We do the best we can, and we're really excited to see when farm media picks it up and spreads it further. But of course, the big question with extension always is, well, you're doing all this talking, is anybody listening? And we do adoption rate surveys. Not us doing it. We get researchers to do it, to do kind of anonymous surveys of cow-calf producers to find out the extent to which they adopt different practices, so we can monitor them over time and then encourage the adoption of ones that seem to be lagging. And on the disease prevention side, I got a report in from Dr. John Campbell, actually, a couple of weeks ago on the Canadian Cow-Calf Surveillance Network. And one of the things they were looking at was the adoption of vaccination practices on farm. That's something that we've struggled with for a long time, just people understanding the importance of vaccination. And what they said in this report was that when you compare vaccination practices in the cow-calf sector today to where they were 20 years ago, it is unrecognizable, the difference. The degree to which producers are adopting vaccination, and a lot of them are also making sure that the booster vaccinations are being given as well. And so, I mean, that's vaccination, but we're also seeing gradual, steady improvements in the adoption of things like feed testing. Just having the contact with the producers and our extension team is really valuable, because you start to realize that, well, we've been encouraging, and not just us, but extension people, provincial extension people and whatnot, have been telling people to get their feed tested for decades. And then you start asking people, well, do you feed test? And they say, well, I used to, but I don't anymore. I say, well, why don't you? I said, well, because I got this feed test result back, and I don't know if you've ever looked at one, but they're incomprehensible. It's all just
they kind of
abbreviations and numbers.
Right.
It makes no sense if you're not a nutritionist, right?
That's right.
And so I paid a bunch of money, or collected this stuff, sent it away, paid a bunch of money, got this report I don't understand, so I just put it in a drawer, and well, that's not doing me any good, so I stopped. And so, okay, well, the point isn't that people aren't interested in feed testing. They need to know what to do with the information. And so we've developed a tool that allows you to put some of the key numbers in, tells you where to look on your feed sheet, tells you what to look for, and put that into this, plug it in into this tool, and it'll tell you, oh, you've got a problem. Or this feed will be good for this group of cattle, but not that group of cattle. And our point with that wasn't put nutritionists or feed companies out of business. Our point was to help producers understand when they've got a real problem that they need help with.
And thank goodness for it, because those sheets are, if you don't know what you're looking for, oh my goodness, they can be very overwhelming. So, but that, I think that's a great example of understanding, taking something all the way through to making actionable decisions based on some data or some research or some knowledge. How do we bring it through to what's the action that we can take at the end? I, for one, really appreciate the resources available to actually say, okay, what does this actually mean? All right, Reynold, we'll leave it at that. This has been fantastic. Let's do this more often, because it's been a little while. All right, Reynold, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. This has been absolutely fantastic.
Thanks, Lyndsey.
All right, thank you to Reynold for joining me on today's show, and thank each of you, of course, for joining me as well. Big thanks to AgSmart Expo for sponsoring today's show. Let's head to a break and get to our last segment of the day. Just after the break, you're going to hear from Calvin Hepner and Marla Reikman talking about balancing the 4 R's. All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. I am Lyndsey Smith, your host for the day. And today's show is brought to you by AgSmart Expo, happening August 1st and 2nd at Olds College. Head to agsmartolds.ca for tickets and for more information. All right, we go now to a discussion with Calvin Hepner and Marla Reikman with Manitoba Agriculture, talking about balancing the 4 R's of nutrient management and making sure that one is not necessarily making another worse.
Pleased to be joined by Marla Reikman, Soil Management Specialist with Manitoba Agriculture. And Marla, of course, there's a lot of discussion about the 4 R's when it comes to our fertilizer strategy and approaches to applying fertilizer, meeting the crop's nutrient needs. We have these 4 categories on the chart when it comes to 4 R's, but really they are not independent from each other. That's kind of your lesson that you're trying to get across here at Crop Diagnostic School.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, again, 4 R's, it's applying the right source at the right rate, right time, and right place. And I think it's important that we don't forget about the fact that, you know, again, they're not independent. When we think about, we've been going through it at Crop Diagnostic School with a chart, with like, how do you do like at a basic or an intermediate or an advanced approach from 4 R's for rate and for source and for, you know, placement and timing. And when we go through it in a very basic approach like that, it kind of makes us think about it as being, again, very independent. But when you start combining these concepts together, that's when you get that flexibility, the different ways of being able to manage different years, right? Like different weather things, whatever's getting thrown at us, prices, commodity prices, input prices, all that kind of stuff. We can work with those 4 R's to try to, again, modify from year to year. Doesn't mean that we're always going with like high level advanced everything. Sometimes we might be pushed back, but it's a bit about that flexibility about being able to kind of determine what's going to work best for you in that situation to be the most economical and therefore come along as being, you know, good agronomic planning and environmentally beneficial at the same time.
If we're looking at it through that environmental lens, it's interesting. You can actually become more advanced in one category but still take a step backwards in terms of your overall environmental impact or the emissions from a fertilizer application.
Yeah, so I mean, you can think about, it's like, okay, we want to, you know, go like super environmental, and we might be able to make like really specific decisions, but again, if it's not going to meet the bottom line for a farmer, then it's not actually going to be beneficial in the long run. And if it's not going to be, you know, economical for a farmer, you're not going to expect somebody to continue to want to carry out that practice. So, I mean, we often talk about the fact that to be the most efficient or the most effective, we need to have good agronomy, good economics, and good environmental planning all working together, because if it is one benefiting one, it should kind of benefit the rest of them if it's going to be something that is actually going to be useful for a farmer and a tool that, you know, they're going to want to come back to.
Yeah. I think of the example, you use a urease inhibitor, enhanced efficiency fertilizer product. So you're moving away from just urea to using that. But say that means you apply it in spring broadcast instead of banding it. Yeah. You've moved ahead in one category, but you've moved backwards in the broader sense, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of like looking at the approaches. Again, they're not independent of each other. So, I mean, if you were broadcasting urea in the spring and not incorporating it and just hoping for that rainfall in order to drive it into the ground, you know, you need that half-inch rain. What's the probability of getting that? Well, it depends on where you are. You can look back at some of the climate information. You might have, you know, a decent probability of getting that half-inch rain event on a specific day in early May when you are trying to actually, you know, get that urea in the ground. But in a year like this year, here at Carmen, where we are for Crop Diagnostic School, we went through the first 6 weeks from like May 1 until mid-June with 17 millimeters of rain, and that was it. And so we did not have that rain event that we required in order to actually move that urea in the ground. So in that case, you know, we did a demonstration looking at ammonia volatilization. We actually had a benefit then, of course, by using a product like an Agritane, an NBPT, some kind of urease inhibitor, because now that urease inhibitor is actually going to, again, protect for a little bit. But is it protecting long enough? You know, we were looking for 7 to 10 days of protection to wait for the rain. But 6 weeks later, the rain still hadn't come.
Yeah. And I guess machinery and design of your seeding equipment, fertilizer application equipment is all part of this conversation as well when it comes to the 4 R's and agronomy. It needs to influence your equipment purchasing decisions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I recall a previous Manitoba Agronomist Conference and an agronomist who was on a panel talking about, you know, I just wish that the the equipment, or that I wish that my farmer would talk to me before they go to the equipment dealer. And I think that's a really important thing. We need to remember the agronomic plan of the farm and what the farm's capabilities are when we're making those decisions for equipment. So, I mean, you mentioned here where we're standing talking about canola, we're looking at seed safe rates for ammonium sulfate. Of course, we've got salt toxicity and ammonium toxicity. We've got these problems that can come along if we try to put too much down with the seed. What alternatives do we have for placement if all we have at the ready for us is something with a narrow opener, very small seedbed utilization, and we need to get fertilizer down with the crop? We're really restricted on what we can put down because we don't have the flexibility to put it down elsewhere. If we don't have mid-row band or something like that, or some kind of, other opener options for placement, side banding, whatever that ends up being. And so, again, we're restricted by the equipment sometimes, and it's important to keep in mind that, again, when we're doing those types of investments, if we're not thinking about being able to actually place fertilizer in the future, we're investing in a piece of equipment that is restricting us more than anything, as opposed to opening up more options for us. And that kind of more very focused approach, one would say, can actually become problematic in the future, because now we have to figure out other ways to adapt to get that fertilizer in the ground.
Yeah. An example there again would be seed safe fertilizer and pushing rates there, because that's what we're set up to get the fertilizer down that way, even though it might be toxic to the canola seed in this example.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, and we don't often we don't spend enough time actually going out and, turn the fertilizer off for a little bit and see how things look, and go out and do plant stand counts and really document the change. Specifically for the stuff that we were talking about here today with the ammonium sulfate toxicity on canola, we're talking about rolling landscapes and hillier landscapes with eroded knolls, where we actually have a higher risk of ammonium toxicity, where that topsoil has been stripped off, because you've got this high carbonate subsoil that's exposed, and that's kind of disrupting things in terms of how that is affecting the canola. And when we have these lower stands, essentially, and lower emergence on those eroded knolls, you're going to blame that on the fact that, it's dry up there's not a whole lot of topsoil. The crop never really grows really well on those eroded knolls.
Flea beetles were probably bad in that spot too.
Yeah, right. We'll come up with every other reason except for the fact that it's probably actually the seed placement of that fertilizer that's causing the problem. We're not going to know that unless we shut that down and check that out and see what that looks like.
Yeah. Overall, then, in terms of the take-home message here at Crop Diagnostics School, I guess bringing it back to the 4 R's, it's not independent of each other. It is everything's connected when it comes to that fertilizer strategy.
Absolutely. And again, just keeping those things in mind, and what tools do you have in the toolbox? So when you're looking at the farm itself and you're looking at all the different things that you have at the ready, what crops you're growing, what fertilizer placement options you have, what inputs are you putting into that in terms of information, like soil samples, and whether it's, zone sampling, it's composite sampling, all those different types of pieces of information that are going into an overall plan. All of those things then allow for, again, the flexibility and that application of that 4-hour plan in kind of real time. But we need to be able to carry out essentially the plan if we have that right equipment option for us.
Yeah. All right.
All right, and with that, we are done for the day. It has absolutely flown by. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, if you've got feedback on today's show, you can call that RealAg feedback line, 1-855-776-6147. We'd love to hear from you, of course. Big thanks to our show sponsor, AgSmart Expo, happening next week at Olds College. Head to agsmartolds.ca for more information. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. Stay safe, stay cool, and we'll talk to you again. Cheers.